You have no idea what this person has held back, what was swallowed down without a reaction, how much they wanted to speak, but didn't, how many times the message was written and erased, how many times the truth got stuck in their throat and died there. It wasn't for lack of pain, it was because they realized no one was ready to listen. This person swallowed hard, fell silent, endured, with the world believing everything was fine, with people praising their strength, without noticing the exhaustion hidden deep in their eyes. No one noticed, or pretended it was nothing. But now, everything will come out, without pause, without softness, without a draft. And those who listen will feel. Because it's not a pretty outpouring, it's a raw outpouring. It's what has been trapped for so long that it no longer knows how to come out gently. This person will open their heart. They will speak the words that got stuck. They will release what has been trapped in their soul for years, and they will not hold back. They will talk about the small slips that everyone thought they overcame, but they didn't overcome. They just learned to disguise it better. This person noticed everything. The coldness disguised as tiredness, the distance disguised as routine, the words spoken thoughtlessly, yet that hurt like a knife. They realized, they swallowed. They pretended it was nothing. But now they won't pretend anymore. Now they don't expect any response, no affection, no explanation. This person just wants to empty what has become too heavy to keep carrying. And when they start to speak, it will be as if they are pulling their own heart out with their hands, not to offer it, but to liberate it. If this touched you, comment, "I needed to hear this." Because when this person finishes, they won't ask to stay. They won't beg to be understood. They won't insist on anything more. They will simply let what was stored fall, and whoever has to deal with it can deal with it. It's no longer about reconciliation. It's about relief. It's about finally being able to breathe without swallowing words. And now that she's going to speak, nothing and absolutely nothing, it will remain in the same place. You can no longer pretend that nothing is happening. This person has held on for too long. You might have thought she had forgotten, that everything was in the past, that what hurt once no longer stings, but no, this person hasn't forgotten. She just learned to pretend better than she should have, because the truth is that everything she kept inside is still there, sleeping in silence, waiting for any sudden movement to wake up. And now, it's waking up. That's how it goes. Pain doesn't give a heads up when it returns, it just comes back, and when it does, it comes back whole, as if it never left. This person is not trying to play the victim. She isn't looking for applause for enduring so much. In fact, she doesn't even know what she's trying to be anymore. All she knows is that she held on so tightly for so long that now it just can't contain it anymore. Have you noticed that in the way she responds curtly, in how she avoids certain topics? In the distant look when someone asks if everything's okay, you notice. Even if you don't say anything, you notice. Because there's a silence that only those who have felt it know how to decipher. This person has held on to things you can't even imagine. And they weren't huge traumas, that they were small neglects, details, hurtful words, things that seemed harmless. But together piled up the pain. A tiny, everyday pain. But it has become unbearable. This person wanted to speak out, many times, so many times. But she stayed silent, out of fear of seeming weak, out of shame of being judged, out of not knowing how to translate into words everything that burned inside. And now she is at her limit. And when a person reaches their limit, they don't shout, they collapse. And when they collapse, they don't choose their words. They say everything. Are you ready to listen? This person will talk about what was left for later, about what was ignored with a "I'll be right back," about what was broken with a "I don't know what I want." She will talk about the time she wanted to have a conversation, but realized there was no space for it. She will talk about the times she tried. She truly tried. Tried to adapt, to shrink herself, to mold into something else. Tried not to be a bother. But now she's tired. This person no longer wants to be the understanding one, the patient one, the one who understands everything, the one who listens to everyone, yet is never heard. She wants to be heard now, and she doesn't want advice, doesn't want cliches, doesn't want to be interrupted. She wants to be heard with presence. She wants someone to finally notice, Notice the tone of her voice. Notice the tremor in her breath. Notice how her body shrinks when someone speaks loudly. Notice that the courage she has to carry on comes from a place where no one else treads. This person is hanging by a thread, and you know it. Even if you don't say it, you feel it. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone hides their pain for too long? It transforms, and when it erupts, there's no turning back. This person will start to speak, and it might seem like she's telling just any story. But it's not just any story. It's the truth she's held onto for years. It's her version, the one that no one ever wanted to hear. She will let it all out, without worrying if you'll understand, without fear of being misunderstood, with no filter. And maybe that will scare you, because you'll realize that while she suffered in silence, you were too distracted to notice. Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me in the comments. This person will speak of everything, of when she was ignored, of when she was emotionally ghosted, of when she asked for presents and received scraps, of when she cried in the shower so no one would hear, of when she had to swallow her own anguish because there was no one who wanted to listen. This person will speak with pain, but not to punish you. Will speak to free herself. She understands that holding all this in only harms her, and that waiting for the perfect moment to express her feelings is like waiting for the pain to ask for permission to exist. This person no longer wants to justify their own suffering. They only want the world to truly listen to what they have to say. Are you ready? Because once they speak, nothing will ever be the same again. No relationship will remain unchanged. No memory will stay intact. No name will feel light. This person will talk about everything they've tried to erase, about everything they were told was an overreaction, about everything that was labeled as drama, about everything that was brushed aside. But they didn't let it go. They only kept it in silence. And now the silence has reached its limit. Share this with someone who needs to reflect on it. This person will speak, and every sentence will be a mirror, a reflection of what you also feel but never had the courage to admit. They will say what you once wanted to say. They will voice everything you've also repressed, and it will be impossible not to see yourself in them. And the worst part won't be hearing it. The worst part will be realizing that what they're saying what you already knew but chose to ignore. Now there's no escaping it. Now what was hidden comes to light, and anyone nearby will have to face it. This person isn't breaking, they are being reborn. But the process is raw, it's painful, it's visceral, and it demands that you be fully present to listen. Can you do that? Finish this sentence. Being invisible in Brazil is, this person will speak as if it were the last time, as if there were no tomorrow, as if they've already given up trying to be understood and only want to be free. You will notice it in their gaze, in the tone of their voice, in the rhythm of their breath. You will realize there's no longer room to pretend. Everything that was avoided is now at the center of the conversation, and there's no way to run anymore. This person will talk, and when they do, it will hurt. But it will also liberate. It will make it clear that they never wanted to hurt anyone. They just wanted to exist without having to beg for attention. They just wanted to be treated with the bare minimum that any human being deserves: recognition. Yes, that word. Recognition. To see with the heart. Notice what no one says. Feel what isn't spoken. This person has noticed everything. And now, they want someone to notice them too. If this text moved you, write a word that defines you right now. Because this isn't just any rant. It's about the exact moment when a soul decides to stop pretending. And when that happens, there's no turning back, only truth. This person is tired of carrying everything alone, tired of being strong out of obligation, tired of putting on the facade of someone who can handle it all, while internally they implode in silence. Do you have any idea what it's like to pretend you're okay, when all you want is to disappear? Do you realize what happens to someone who spends too long trying to be understood by those who have never been willing to listen? It's a kind of exhaustion that can't be cured with rest. It isn't healed with distraction. It won't be resolved with travel, reading, or prayer. It's deeper than that. It's more intimate, more irreversible. This person is exhausted from explaining the obvious, from justifying reactions that are merely consequences, from having to smile to maintain connections that only they support, from having to stay quiet to keep the peace in an environment that has never been safe. Do you understand this? Can you see that it's not about drama, but about emotional survival? They no longer want to feel the need to prove themselves. They don't want to diminish themselves to fit into spaces that have always been too small for their intensity. They no longer want to justify themselves to those who never had the sensitivity to ask, "Are you really okay?" and want to hear the whole answer. This person will talk about things that seem small to those who have never lived what they have lived. But for them, those things were enough to crack the structure, to lose faith in being heard, in affection, in reciprocity. They will talk about ignored messages that bled like abandonment, about broken promises that became eternal noise inside their chest, about absences that hurt more than any malicious presence. And you will realize, she no longer wants an apology. She doesn't want a fix. She wants closure. She wants to put an end to what has lingered too long. She wants to shed the weight of stories that forced her to stay silent so she wouldn't seem overdramatic. She is not overdramatic. She just felt everything more authentically than you were able to offer. And now she doesn't want to soften it anymore. She wants to be intense. She wants to be raw. She wants to be free. She spent her life trying to be accepted. And today, she just wants to be respected. Have you ever listened to someone vent like this? Comment, "I used to be that person." This person doesn't just want to move on anymore. That's superficial. That's what people say to avoid dealing with the depth of what has been lived. She wants to close chapters without open wounds. She wants to breathe without feeling guilty. She wants to remember without swallowing her tears. She will talk about what no one else wanted to hear. And when she speaks, it will hurt. But for the first time, this pain will heal, because there is no possible healing while living in denial, while pretending that nothing significant happened, while pushing aside what was devastation inside. This person lived for years in emotional collapse, and now she wants to rebuild herself, not with pretty words, not with people who promise and disappear, not with rehearsed speeches about self-awareness. She wants to rebuild with clear silence, with real relationships, with whole presences, and anyone who can't offer that will lose the right to stay. She won't ask for love anymore. She won't ask for time anymore. She won't ask for anything anymore. She will speak. And after that, she will leave, even if she stays. She will leave behind the illusion. She will leave behind the attempt. She will leave behind the waiting. This person has realized no one is coming. No one saves. No one fully understands. And that's okay. Now she will save herself, even with fear, even alone, even without guarantees. She doesn't need to be understood anymore. She needs to be free. This person no longer wants to scream. Now she wants true silence, the one who comes after the most intimate confession, the one where the soul says, "I said what needed to be said." This isn't about revenge, it's about peace, finally being able to sit, breathe, and not carry anyone inside you anymore. That person you recognized in the text might be right next to you now. They could be at your job. They might be sleeping under the same roof as you. Or it could be you. And maybe no one noticed. Maybe everyone thought it was all fine. Because this person doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't threaten. They just hold it in, just swallow it down, just keep going. Until they can't anymore. And when they finally break down, stun, it's not out of anger, it's out of limits. Limits of enduring too much, of trying too hard, of waiting too long, and getting almost nothing in return. This person doesn't want to convince anyone of anything anymore. They don't want to prove they feel. They don't want to justify their pain. They just want to exist in peace, without the burden of having to be strong all the time, without the pressure to smile when they don't want to, without having to explain that "I'm fine" is just a rehearsed response. They've realized that no one notices. No one sees when the sparkle in their eyes dims slowly. No one hears the scream that comes from silence. No one asks twice when the answer is too short, and that's why now they speak up. Not for revenge, for liberation. They no longer need those who didn't stay. They don't need late attention anymore. They don't need to ask for what should have been offered. If you recognize this within yourself or in someone else, share this video now. Don't wait for the pain to turn into a breakdown. Someone close to you might be silently swallowing their own end. Subscribe to the channel right now if this message resonated with you. Here, you won't find superficiality. You'll find truths that hurt but heal. Truths that don't come to please but to awaken. Comment below. When did you realize you were carrying everyone's weight, except your own? Don't hold it in anymore. Don't hide anymore. Leave here what no one has been able to hear. Your comment could be the cry that someone else hasn't had the courage to make. And if this video moved you, hit the like button, not for the algorithm, but for awareness. Because the more people click, the further this message will reach where it needs to go. This person, you know who they are, doesn't need to pretend anymore. They don't have to wait for the right moment. They just need the space to say, I'm not okay, and it's okay not to be okay.